Welcome back to Hot Roster today. Gary and Cam still with you, now breaking down the football feast card currently available to you on Hot Roster.
Feast or famine, Garian.
8 matchups on this card, Cam. So let's pick through some of these because some of them are pretty fun. We'll start at the quarterback position. Actually, we just brought up Marcus Mariota and how I kind of think the Titans are going to be running the ball a lot in that game against Cleveland. He is a 2-point underdog to Carson Palmer, who we were both not exactly nice to on the program yesterday. I will say Cleveland so far this season has allowed 15-plus points to every quarterback they have faced. One of just 2 teams in the NFL to do so. That's a nice little floor for Marcus Mariota. But are you going Mariota or Palmer?
You know what? I might have to go with Mariota. Even when he threw for 163, Gary, and he had 3 touchdowns too. Yeah. And what does he do around the goal?
What was our rule?
What?
What was our rule?
What's the rule?
If it happens against the Dolphins, it doesn't count.
That's right. It doesn't count against Miami. But I'll tell you, he's still around the goal line. He might even call his number himself. Yep. He's that type of guy. I'm still not sure I trust Carson Palmer, and we're getting 2 points. Also, I have to look right now. You know what? Carson Palmer in the matchup is -2. I got to go with Mariota. I know a lot of other guys are going to run the ball, but I'm down with it. I think it's a good matchup for him, and I'll take the underdog.
It's a good matchup for Carson Palmer too.
It is.
The Jets have not been able to stop
Jets and
anyone
their secondary's been getting
so far
ripped
this season. Darrelle Revis now owns the continent of Australia. That's the size of Revis Island at this point. I mean, it is not good right now. They've allowed the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks so far this season. 23-plus fantasy points in 3 of those 5
Larry
games.
Fitzgerald might go off.
And sort of how we talked about yesterday, it's feast or famine for Carson Palmer. I'm going to go with the upside here with Carson Palmer.
You're laying it down with Palmer -2?
Look, I usually like the floor, the elevated floor guys, but I'm going to go with Carson Palmer in this matchup. But let's move to some wide receivers now. A.J. Green is a half-point favorite over Odell Beckham Jr., who finally got into the end zone last week.
Yeah, debatable, but he's in.
I mean, officially.
Half a foot. Yeah, officially it counts.
If he's Des Bryant, he's not in. He's Odell Beckham, it's fine.
Great point. So true.
You going with A.J. Green or you going with Odell Beckham?
The numbers are almost the same, Gary. A.J. Green, 52 targets. Odell Beckham, 51. I'll tell you, though, even though it's New England, I like the matchup with A.J. Green. Yeah. Cincinnati Bengals are a desperate team. Odell Beckham, I still think there's something wrong. There's a disconnect between him and Manning. I think it's a great matchup. Beckham versus, we got the Ravens? I kind of like A.J. Green in this matchup against New England. I still think he's going to get a lot of touches. Hey, with the Cincinnati running back situation too, I think they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more.
And I think they'll be throwing the ball just because game script might dictate that they're going to be losing in this game. I think on paper, at the start of the season, this looked like a great matchup.
Garbage time at the end. Dalton might have to go, do a lot of long throws at the end.
There's only one team who have trailed on a higher percentage of their snaps than Cincinnati. They've trailed on 73% of their offensive snaps, and that's the Miami Dolphins at 74%.
And they don't count.
Bad company.
They don't count.
They're the worst.
Bengals suck.
So right now, if you look at that, New England often leading in games. Right now, 64% of the time opponents are passing on New England because New England is usually winning in those contests. I feel like this sets up perfectly for a garbage time situation for some big A.J. Green numbers. And New England hasn't been that great against the pass this season anyway. And then Baltimore, we just talked about Tennessee, how they're kind of one of those teams that just slow the game down. The defense is a little bend but don't break. Baltimore, just 1.8 red zone trips per game to their opponents, by far the best in the NFL. So I don't feel like the Giants are going to be in a situation to score a lot of points in this game.
Also, I know A.J. Green is a guy that alternates good and bad, and last week against Dallas, he was pretty pedestrian. So he's the type of guy to go off, very, very much like Julio Jones. When he has that off game, the next game you better watch out because he's going to blow it up.
In the same sense, though, you got to feel like ODB is going to break one off pretty soon. But
I'll take A.J. Green.
I'm going to take A.J. Green, even with the half point there. Okay, let's go back to quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford is a 1-point favorite against Brian Hoyer. Everyone's favorite, Brian Hoyer. You think he's going to continue this sort of magical run?
Yeah, I do. It's actually, Jacksonville, bend don't break, but I'm telling you about Hoyer. The percentages impressed me too. 78%, 77%. Yeah. It's not just a thing. So the Bears are playing. I know one game was against the Indianapolis Colts, Gary, but Hoyer is a monster. He's throwing for major yardage right now. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. Let's not take anything away from this guy. He can score on Jacksonville. And as for Stafford, the last couple weeks, he's regressed. This team hasn't looked the same. So I got to be honest with you. Hoyer's an underdog in the matchup. I actually really like Hoyer over Stafford.
I will say last week's matchup against Philly was maybe one of the tougher matchups you could draw as a quarterback. They've just been very stingy with
Before that, he wasn't that great either.
He wasn't in that game. But again, it's a tough situation with Stafford where I don't think it's necessarily him to blame. It's that they might have the worst defense in the league. And like we talked about with Marcus Mariota and going back even a segment before with the Browns quarterbacks, if you don't have the ball, you can't do anything with it. So you a fan of Sesame Street?
What?
Fan of Sesame Street?
Going
back in the day?
I used to watch Sesame
Street.
Street.
One of these things aren't like the other. One of these things. you mentioned the completion percentage
Yep.
for Brian Hoyer right now. If you line it up throughout his career, like right now, 75%
Smooth.
on passes that have been aimed so far this season. That is way out of left field for Brian Hoyer. This guy has never been an accurate quarterback.
Maybe he's just feeling it right now, right?
might
No,
be.
but look at the numbers. 317 and 2 touchdowns versus Dallas. 302 and 2 versus Philly. 397 versus Indy. It's the same thing every time. Over 300 yards and a couple touchdowns. That's Hoyer right now.
It's a great matchup, but I'm going to go with Stafford. I think Stafford also has a really good matchup. It's not like the Bears are shutting anyone down on defense.
No, they're
either.
not.
So I'm going to go with Stafford.
We agree to
here.
disagree on that one.
I like it. It's okay. Todd Gurley.
Yes.
Half-point favorite against Kristen Michael. This is a very interesting one because Gurley, a guy who, even though he hasn't done a whole lot so far this season, and we mentioned how bad the Detroit defense has been, he's going to get his carries. Second in the NFL in carries.
Great point. But that's
Kristen
the thing.
Michael,
he's got so many more carries than Michael, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, Gurley hasn't been doing anything.
Nothing.
He's under 3 yards a carry, right, Garion? So I'm waiting for him to bust him. He's not. And as for Michael, he's been underrated. He's a little speed burner. Atlanta has to go into Seattle. That's a tough situation.
Yeah.
And they're getting more and more confidence. I'm actually going to take Kristen Michael in the situation because you know what? I'm still not sold on Gurley. I think Michael can actually shred Atlanta.
I think this is the week that Gurley has one of those
That he goes
runs.
bonkers?
It's the week where the NFL Today update comes in,
Yeah.
and it's like Gurley 90-yard run. Like their defense is that bad in Detroit, and that's one of the reasons too that I kind of like Matthew Stafford in that last matchup. I just think this is going to be as weird as it is to say that the Rams could be in a shootout this week. That's how bad Detroit's defense is. So I think there's going to be ample opportunity for points.
You got
on
faith
both
in
sides
Case
of the ball.
Keenum. You got faith in the offense.
Give me some Case Keenum. All about Case Keenum. Maybe not so much, but I think Gurley is the guy who's going to get in the end zone on these types of plays.
And you bring up the point. The thing about them, too, is Gurley's one of those guys, they just keep on giving it to him and
25.
giving it to him, and eventually it's going to happen.
Like, I will guarantee he finishes the game with at least 25 carries. And I like Kristen Michael, and I think it's a great matchup against Atlanta. And that was the Football Feast card, which, again, you can play. You can play these exact matchups we just talked about at HotRoster.com, so do that right now. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Thursday night football game. Do a
Bolts
little
and Bronx.
hashtag stuff, so stick around for that.